This meeting is being recorded.
So guys, today is your second day for this SQL fundamentals, and this will be the last session also for this SQL. And agenda for today is these some topics. The first one is like updating based on where clause. Then we have this cascading effects on update and delete, and similarly some other clauses we will see in the SQL. Okay, and just make yourself comfortable with whatever we are discussing today and whatever we have discussed yesterday. Okay, so these concepts would be very important for your Spring Boot. So going forward, we will use this SQL concepts to connect with our DB to query any data from the DB and other stuffs related to the database. Okay, so it's the right time for you people to just make yourself comfortable with whatever topics we are discussing. Okay, so let's get started. So already, I guess everyone would have installed this MySQL in their machine. I have already installed it like some time before. Okay, so let me show you once. So you will find some structure, something like this. So you can use this MySQL workbench. Otherwise, you can use some other this DB tools. Okay, so basically we call it as a DB visualizer or any other tools like your DB Weaver. Some people used to prefer. So I think what is Arjit has recommended you to use this DB Weaver only. Okay, so let me show you one thing. Just give me 1 minute, guys. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so what I was saying. So I guess everyone would have installed this MySQL. So let me just show you this client for one more time. So once you will install, you will just open this command line. So you will get the CLI for MySQL. So you can just enter your command with this CLI itself. Otherwise, you can use any DB visualizer. Okay, so for now, just let me show you. Let me enter my password. Okay, so I have already entered my SQL. So let's see what in all databases we have. Okay, so these are some of the databases which we have right now. Okay, so I'm not going to use this thing, this command line. I'll use some UI tool. So right now I have this UI tool called DB Visualizer. I think yesterday Arjit would have demonstrated you for this one, DB Weaver. So you can use that one also. Okay, so already since I was already having installed this, so I will use the same. Okay. So there won't be any differences. The difference would be only the terms of the UI phases, the screens and all. It will be difference. It will differ, but the rest of the thing, the command and everything will work as it is. Okay. So let me expand it. And already these are my databases. So whatever databases we saw just now in the command line. So these are some of the databases already present. So let me create one more database for you for today's session. Okay, I'll name it as a Gexter sessions. Okay, Gexter session. I will make it as one of my DB here. Okay. Okay, so it has been created now. Okay. Right now I don't have any table. So let's go and see what's planned for today. Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me and my screen is visible to everyone. Okay. So in our practice sessions, we had seen some model classes, this employee classes basically. So in the employee class last session, I had made you aware about the different relationship between the entities. So here you can see I have one entity employee, and in this employee I have another entity called this address. So in today's session, I would like to just design these two tables. Basically, one table will be there to store the details of the employees like name, age, salary, work experience, and other detail will be this address. Okay, so address will be a different table altogether. Okay, so let's do it. Let's design the table and just write some query to create the table for this. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let me go here. Okay, so here I have this thing, this new SQL commander. So from here itself, I can uh, give the command. Okay, so I have selected my database. Accordingly, you can select your database, whatever you will create. Okay, so let me write the query for this. So already these things we have discussed, I guess, yesterday. So let me just tell you once again quickly. We will do it. So create table, and I will give this command also if not exist. Okay, so it's an optional. It's not like without this it will not be created, but it's always recommended to use this if not exist clause, so that if the table already exists and by mistake someone fires this query, so in that case there won't be any error. Instead, it will not create any table, because this is the condition we are giving before creating the table. Okay, create table if not exist, and we want this table, we want this employee table. Okay, we want this employee table. So I will name it as a employee. Okay, let me name it as a small e, because we follow this kind of standards naming pattern in SQL. Okay, so this thing, now I need to define the columns under this bracket. Okay, this column, what and all columns we should have in this particular table. Okay, so the first column I want it as a employee ID. So here I don't have ID right now. Let me add one column for the ID also, because you will see like in every table we will have some unique column which we will make it as a primary key, and that we call it as ID basically. Okay, so I'll make it as an integer type of empid or simply id, let's say. Okay, so I'll make the id is one of my what one of my column, and type it will be, let's have it as a big int, or you can make it as a int also. So big int is basically what the difference between int and big int, you will have to figure it out of your own. Okay, I'm not going to tell everything. Okay, so big int, and this id I want to just auto generate. I don't want to enter this thing manually. I want SQL, this SQL MySQL to just generate the id for me every time. Every time I insert a new record, the id will be generated. Okay, so for that I have this auto increment. There are some other increment strategy also that we will see in our Spring Boot sessions. Okay, so apart from auto increment, there are some more incremental way with which we can just increment the IDs. Okay, so auto increment, and this ID we want to make it as a primary key. So this is the syntax which we follow. If you want to make any of the ID, any of the columns as a primary key, you just have to mention it during the table creation itself. Okay, now I want the other column as a name. Let me name it as it is, name, and name will be obviously the type will be the string, and in SQL the string is equal to varchar. And apart from varchar, you have to define the size also, what how many characters you want to have for this column. So let's say I want to have it for 20. Okay, and after this if you want to just restrict user to insert the name in the sense, it should not like the name should be null. Okay, so in that case you have to mention as a not null. Basically with this thing, with mentioning it as a not null, if you will try to insert any record in this table with name value as a null, it will throw an exception. It will not allow you to insert an element, insert an entry without the name. Okay, so that's why we are mentioning it as a not null. Then we have age, salary, and work experience. So let's do it. Age, and age will be of type int I'm mentioning, and that also I want to be at not null. Okay, then salary. Salary I want to be again int, or I can make it as a long also. Long, not null. Okay, salary not null. Then we have the work experience. Work exp I'm mentioning. Okay, so just remember one thing in Java, whatever you write in camel casing, okay, camel casing, this we call it as a camel casing. So in SQL, that will be converted with underscore. Okay, so just keep this thing in mind. So it will come like work exp. So the Java, the writing the way of declaring a variable, something like in camel casing, like work, then ex will come something like this, work underscore ex. Okay, exp9 ex only, because here we have this ex. Okay, and this will be what, this will be again a let's have it as an integer type only, integer, and that also I want to be as a not null column. Okay, so that's about the first basically my first table. Okay, that's it, and I'll close this. Okay, so if you will run this query, you should have one table created under this database called Gexter session, which we have created just now. Okay, so let me quickly run this query first and show you. Okay, so here you will find like already created. Now if you will go here and if you will refresh it, you can see the tables created. So here you can see the employee table created and its corresponding column names also mentioned. Okay, now one table we got created. Now come to the second table. Second table is what? Second table is this address. So we want to have one more table, address. Okay, and now basically here if you will see in the employee table, address is what? Address is a part of employee table. Basically it's a different entity which has the relationship between the employee. Okay, which has the relationship with the employee. Here you can see employee has a relation with address. Okay, so it's basically a one-to-one relationship. Okay, so you would have studied already, I guess, one-to-one, one-to-n to n, and n to one. Okay, so these five types of the relationships are there with the different tables. Okay, so here we are following which kind of relationship? It's a one-to-one, one-to-one. Okay, so one employee will have just one address. So that's what we are addressing right now. Okay, now let's go and design the table for the address. So again, for address also we will need one unique key. Okay, I'll name it as a add id. Okay, add id, I'm naming it. The same column we will have it as a in table also. So let's do it. Now again, let's use the same syntax, create table. Okay, create table if not exist, and the name will be address. Correct. Now I want to mention the different columns here. Different columns I need to mention. So first column, what I want as a address id. So again the same camel casing thing. So you will have to write this thing underscore. All the camel casing will be changed to this underscore syntax in case of SQL. And this one again, the id will be as big int only. Okay, and that also I want to be auto generated. So I will make it as a auto increment, auto increment, and I want this column to be a primary key in my table. So I will mention it as a primary key. That's it. Now what other column I want? I want house number, zip code, and city. So let's have it one by one. Okay, so first one is uh, city. City. Okay, so city I want it as a varchar. Varchar means string, and just have it size by 20 only. Okay, you can mention any size. Okay, and that also I want to be not null. Then we have zip code, zip code. Okay, and this one I should have as an integer, and that also I want to be as a not null. Correct. Zip code, then city, zip code, house number. Now we are just left with house number. Okay, so house number should be just int only, not string. Okay, so house number should also be of integer type. House underscore and no I will mention. Okay, and that I want to be as integer, and that also should be not null column. Correct. So these are the 1 2 3 4 columns which I want to be in my address table. So 1 2 3 4, that's it. Now I want to link this table with this table. So what do I mean here? If you will see this employee entity, that means employee table has one dependency on address. So that means I should have a relationship created between these two tables. Okay, so basically I want to have a relationship like one should be the parent and other one should be the child. So here you can see if I am making this table as a parent table, my employee table, then I can have other table like the address table which would be the child of this employee. So how to do that? For that, for that I will need something called a foreign key. So under this table, whatever table I am going to create now, under this table I will have one column. That column will be referencing to this particular table called employee tables. That means there would be one common column between the employee and address, and in that way I'll be able to establish a relationship. Okay, now for that what should I do? There is basically I need to just add what? Foreign key constraint. So basically foreign key is something like a constraint. Okay, so I'll have to mention this constraint, constraint, constraint. Okay, then after constraint I have to mention foreign key. So this is the syntax for writing the a column, adding a column as a foreign key, okay, which will have the foreign keys. And then again you want to have what, you want to have the column name which you want to be as a foreign key. So let's have it like employee id as the foreign key, and that will reference to, so basically reference. Okay, so reference will be what, references will be what, the references will be this particular table, that is your employee table. Okay, employee table will be your references. Okay, so which column you want to link? So basically I want this id to be a foreign key in this particular table, so just mention the id. Okay, that's it. So that's it. And here already my this is closed. So basically what we are writing, constraint foreign key employee id. Okay, so basically I'm defining employee id as a foreign key in this particular table, but again I want this column also, right? So basically I want to add one column in this table which will act as a foreign key. So for that I will have to define that column also. Okay, so let's add this column also, employee id, and that will be again a integer type or big int. Big int, it's, since it is a big int only here. Okay, so just have it as a big int, and that also I want to be as a not null, so that's it. Okay, so in this way my second table, which is nothing but this address table, which will store the details of the employee's address, and that will be stored under this particular table. Okay, so I hope everyone is comfortable so far. Okay, so just stop me then and there if you feel any difficulty. Okay, so I'm done for this. Okay, employee id, references, foreign key. Okay, one more thing. So basically this constraint you are writing for foreign key, so it is always recommended to give one unique column name here, so that if any error comes, if any log, means if anything happens, uh, uh, if any exception occurs during the execution of this particular query, it can just point to that particular foreign key. Okay, point to that particular column, so that we can know like the error is coming because of this particular column. Okay, because of this particular foreign key. So let's name it that also. Foreign key, I will name it as a for fk for foreign key at emp id. Okay, so basically I'm saying if any error comes because of the relationship, that should go for this fk employee id. Okay, so let's run this thing. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, 200 successful. Now let's go and see here. I will refresh my table and see if I got the other table or not. So here you can see I have two tables, address table and employee table. Okay, now we will quickly insert some elements and then we will proceed with our today's topics. So far we are just creating the table so that we can demonstrate the different SQL clauses. Okay, now I hope you already know the insert query. So for inserting the elements into any of the tables, you have to write what? The insert query. So the query goes like insert into the table name. Let's say I want to insert to this address, so insert into address. Okay, and the corresponding columns. So basically you have to mention the column names, what and all columns you want to add, means what and all the values for the columns you want to add. So basically first we need to define the column, then we have to define the value. Okay, so what and all values. So this way we used to define. So let's do it one by one. So id will be auto incremented, so we need not to write it. The city we can write. Okay, city column we will have to write. Then zip code. Okay, sorry, zip code. Then house number. Okay, then we want employee id. Correct, and employee id will be a foreign key. Okay, house number and employee id, that's it. This columns only 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4 5. This id will be what? Id will be auto generated. I need not to mention, I need not to give that value to insert. Okay, so let's have it. City, I'll mention it like let me mention it as a New Delhi. Okay, then state I'll mention it as a now zip code, not state, 110096. I'm mentioning my zip code. Then house number, that is again an integer, I will mention as a 84. Okay, that is my house number. Then I have to enter the employee ID. So I want, suppose I want to update the address for the employee ID 1, okay, which will be an entry in my employee table. Okay, so this will be my first record. Let me create one more record to quickly insert it. So there is one more clause. You can mention the multiple values with the values as one of the keyword here, but let me just put it a separate entry itself so that you don't get confused. Okay, so this time I'll have a different city. Let me name it as a what should I mean? Faridabad. Okay, state, city, zip code, employee ID. So zip code is, let's say, some random number. I don't remember exact zip code. House number, let me tell you as a 49 for this employee number 2. So for employee number 2, I want to insert this particular address, and for employee number, I want to insert this particular address. Now, let me run the query and see what happens. So see it very carefully. Okay, so if you are running it, see here what you are getting. Here you are getting foreign key constraint fails. Gigster session, this address, blah, blah, blah. So basically what it is saying, it is saying the foreign key constraint, whatever you have given for this particular column, for this particular table, इसके लिए जो आपने foreign key constraint दिया है, वो fail हो रहा है. Why fail हो रहा है? That you should think. तो हमने क्या बनाया बेसिकली हमने ये बताया है कि ये टेबल जो है इस टेबल का चाइल्ड है, isn't it? Because this constraint signifies what? This constraint signifies there is a column called employee ID, and that employee ID is referencing to ID of the employee table. Okay, so basically whatever the ID is there in the employee table, that will act as a employee ID, imp underscore ID in my address table. Okay, that's what I meant to say by this particular SQL query. But while inserting the new record, I'm not having any entry in my employee table. Then how come it will be able to insert the new records? Okay, how it will insert the record? That's why this is failing. So in order to fill the records in my child table, first I should have to insert the record in my employee table. That means in my parent table. Okay, so before executing this query, I need to execute the insertion query for the employee table. Okay, so let me do it. So insert into employee. So this is my table where I want to insert the records. Okay, the column name. So basically the what and all columns I want to have, and the value, what and all value I want to insert. Okay, so what and all column I want to have as a name. Then I want to have a age, salary, and then work underscore ex, experience. Okay, so its corresponding value will be what? So what and all value want to insert, just insert it. So employee name I want to have, let's say my name only, Neeraj, and age, let's say 26, salary, let's say 60. Okay, work experience, let's say 3 years. Okay, so this is the value I want to insert into my employee table. Let me create one more record to insert into the employee table. Okay, so employee table, again this name, let me check, change it to Jack. Age I'll make it as a 28. Salary I'll make it as a, let's say 75, and this thing, work experience, I'll make it as a 4 years. Okay, now let's run the query and see what happens. If I'm running this particular query, okay, so this particular query if I'll run, so you will see what? You will see insert has been successful, 200. Okay, you are getting. Okay, now let me insert the other entry also. So other entry also if I am inserting, okay, so see that also I got 200 successful. Okay, now you can check it also. So for checking, you already would be knowing, select star from the table name if you want to check for all the columns. Okay, so if you will run this query, so the two records whichever we have inserted, that should commit for us. So Neeraj Jack, ID 12, work experience 34. Okay, fine. Now let's go to our child table and now try to insert the values. Before it was failing, right? Now let's run the query and insert the elements. Okay, so for this I got success. Let me run the other one also. For this also I got the success. Fine. Now let's check this particular table also, how many records got inserted. Okay, Now if you will run the query, you will see what? You will see something called the address table, where these columns are there. 2 3 would be the auto generated value. Okay, you this value, don't worry about this value. There are many strategies to just increment. Here we are just increasing it based upon something called the auto increment. There are other ways also, we will discuss it, don't worry. Okay, just these are some random numbers would be generated. Okay, city New Delhi Faridabad, zip code, house number, and employee ID. So this employee ID 1 2 are the employee ID of the employee which has been inserted before. Okay, so whichever the records we inserted in this employee table, so those were the only ID here. Okay, so that's what we call as a foreign key. So यही वाले foreign key हैं जो कि क्या है, employee table की ID है. So employee table की ID को ही हमने एक नया कॉलम बनाया है यहाँ पे, जिसको हम foreign key कह रहे हैं. So basically it establishes the relation between the two tables. Okay, so I hope this is clear to everyone. Now so far it was just the basic structure. Now let's go with the today's topic. So today topic is what? Updating based upon some where clause. Okay, updating based upon the where clause. So let's see. Now you have this thing. This thing means this particular records are already there in table. What if at some point of time you want to edit the records? तो आप लोगों ने देखा होगा, आप कोई भी पोर्टल कोई भी वेबसाइट पे जाते हो, सो एट एनी टाइम यू कैन एडिट योर प्रोफाइल, यू कैन जस्ट change your name or whatever you want to do, some modification. So it is possible to do it there. Okay, so something called edit, you would be aware this feature by something called edit. So वही edit backend में कैसे काम करता है, तो backend में उसी edit को हम update कहते हैं. तो update करने का मतलब जो भी टेबल में रिकॉर्ड्स हैं उसको हम क्या कर रहे हैं, अपडेट कर रहे हैं. ओके, अपडेट कर रहे हैं. अपडेट करने का मतलब क्या होता है, यूआई पे तो आप लोग को बहुत ही सिंपल लगता है कि एडिट बटन पे क्लिक किया और डिटेल डाले, वो सेव हो गया, वो चेंज हो गया. लेकिन बैकएंड में क्या हो रहा होता है, चलो उसको देखते हैं. बैकएंड में उसके लिए डेवलपर्स एक क्वेरी फायर करते हैं. ओके, सीक्वल का अपडेट क्वेरी फायर करते हैं. तो चलो उसको करके देखते हैं. कुछ अपडेट करेंगे इस टेबल में. अभी हमारे पास जो एड्रेस टेबल है, whatever the address table we have, this is the record, New Delhi Faridabad, zip code this thing, blah blah blah. Okay, now suppose I want to update the city of this thing, Faridabad. From Faridabad city I want to update it to some other city. Let's say I want to make it as a let's say Faridabad, I want to make it as a Gurgaon. Okay, from Faridabad to Gurgaon I want to edit it as a Gurgaon. So how to do it? For that we will have to write something called an update query. उसके लिए क्या सिंटेक्स होता है, update keyword. Update is a keyword in SQL. Okay, update. Then you have to write what? You have to write the update. What you have to write? First you have to see what? First you have to give the table name. Update table name. So which table you want to update, that particular table you have to give it. So suppose I want to update this particular table, update address, the name of the table. Okay, now you have to give the set, the column name which you want to update. So update address set column name equal to the corresponding value. So I want to set city is equal to city, I want to make as a Gurugram. Okay, city I want to make it as a Gurugram. लेकिन कौन सी सिटी को गुड़गांव बनाऊं? If you will run this particular query, it will update both of the cities. So whatever city column is there, every city will be updated with Gurugram. So for that, to be specific, to update any particular row specifically, we have something called a where clause. तो where clause क्या कहता है कि सिटी को अपडेट करो, गुड़गांव कहाँ पे अपडेट करो. तो यहाँ पे हम कुछ वैल्यू देते हैं, some condition we used to write. Based upon that condition, SQL will update that particular column. So here our column name is city, and that value is we are expecting to have as a Gurgaon, Gurugram. So let's suppose I want to update the value based upon the employee ID. So where employee ID, so again you will write the column name. So employee ID means IMP ID, where column employee ID equal to let's say 2. Okay, so इस particular employee का मैं address जो है फरीदाबाद से गुड़गांव change करना चाहता हूँ. So this is the query which I should write it in my program. Okay, तो इसी query को हम अपने Java program से fire करेंगे, तो हमारा टेबल क्या हो जाएगा, अपडेट हो जाएगा. So now let's do it. Okay, so you can see update has been successful. Now let's run the query and see if it has been updated or not. So here you can see city फरीदाबाद से गुड़गांव बन गया. ठीक है, फरीदाबाद से गुड़गांव बन गया. सो इन दिस वे आई हैव अपडेटेड माय सिटी टू गुड़गांव. ओके, एनी डाउट एनीवन इन द अपडेट क्वेरी में बहुत लोगों को दिक्कत होती है. राइट नाउ इट्स जस्ट अ सिंगल कॉलम. व्हाट इफ आई वांट टू अपडेट टू ऑफ द कॉलम्स, तो उस केस में भी दिक्कत हो सकती है. व्हाट इफ आई वांट टू अपडेट द जिप कोड आल्सो. So suppose I want to update the zip code also. So this time I will update the zip code and house number also. So what if you have to update the two column? Okay. तो यहाँ पे कॉलम नेम जिप कोड को क्या बना देंगे, जिप कोड को कुछ सेट कर देते हैं 1 2 3 4 5. ओके, एंड और दूसरे जिस कॉलम को अपडेट करना है, द सेकंड कॉलम विच यू वांट टू अपडेट, यू हैव टू पुट कॉमा एंड गिव द सेकंड कॉलम नेम. So second column, suppose I want to update it as a house number. So house underscore number, and that I want to have it as a what? Let's say I want to make it as a 54, house number 54. And where I want to update these values, these columns, I want to update it for the employee ID 2. So now let's run the query. So if you will run, the query has been successful. Now let's check it. So here if you will see, zip code 1 2 3 4 5 बन गया और house number 54 बन गया उस particular employee का. Okay, so in this way we can update any record in my table based upon the where condition. If you will not write where condition, even though this query will run, but for all these two records it will run. The updation will happen for all the records in the table. Right now it's just a two record, but if at some point of time there will be like millions lakhs of records in your table, so all those million and lakhs of records would be what? Updated with your condition, updated with your value, whatever you are providing under the set clause. Okay, so that was about the update query. So I hope it's clear to everyone. Okay, now let's move forward, and then understanding cascading effect using on update and on delete. Okay, ओके, कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट हमें पढ़ना है ऑन अपडेट एंड ऑन डिलीट का. ठीक है, पहले समझो कि कैस्केडिंग होता क्या है. सी, सो एज यू कैन सी हियर we have an employee table and then employee is dependent on another table called address table. So अभी एक सिनेरियो वो करो, एज्यूम करो कि अगर हम कुछ चेंज करते हैं एम्प्लॉय टेबल में. लेट्स से I am changing the employee ID. So basically, if I am updating the employee ID of an employee, let's say from 1 to let's say some value called 5. So वो particular ID एड्रेस में कैसे अपडेट होगा, एड्रेस में कैसे अपडेट होगा. That means, see here, employee ID is what? It's a column which is common in both of the tables, employee table and address table. So अगर मैं एम्प्लॉय टेबल में उसको चेंज करता हूँ एम्प्लॉय आईडी को, तो वो एड्रेस टेबल में भी कैसे चेंज होगा? इट विल नॉट बी चेंज ऑटोमेटिकली, राइट? वील हैव टू डू समथिंग. व्हाट आई मीन टू से, अगर मान लो ये एड्रेस टेबल है, लेट फॉरगेट अबाउट एड्रेस टेबल, दिस टाइम आई विल अपडेट द एम्प्लॉय टेबल. तो आई विल अपडेट द एम्प्लॉय टेबल, सेट आईडी इक्वल टू, मैं आईडी को सेट करना चाहता हूँ, आईडी इक्वल टू लेट्स से 5, वेयर आईडी इक्वल टू, जहाँ पे आईडी 2 है उसको मैं 5 बनाना चाहता हूँ. व्हाट आई मीन टू से, इफ आई रन दिस क्वेरी, तो यहाँ पे क्या है, आईडी क्या है यहाँ पे 2. तो जो जैक है, जैक की एम्प्लॉय आईडी में क्या करना चाहता हूँ, जैक की एम्प्लॉय आईडी में 2 से 5 अपडेट करना चाहता हूँ, 2 से 5 अपडेट करना चाहता हूँ. तो since we have one more table, address table, and in this table, this 2 employee ID, that means this new address, in the address table we have this employee ID as a 2, which has this particular address, Gurugram, zip code, and this particular values, blah blah blah. Okay, so how this 2 also will be changed to 5, क्योंकि ये दोनों टेबल एक दूसरे से डिपेंडेंट है, राइट? सो इफ यू आर मेकिंग एनी चेंज इन वन ऑफ द टेबल, इन द चाइल्ड टेबल आल्सो इट शुड रिफ्लेक्ट, करेक्ट? सो क्या होगा अगर मैं इसको ऐसे रन करता हूँ, तो इसको मैं ऐसे रन करता हूँ, तो यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे फेल हो गया है, यहाँ पे ये फेल हो गया. व्हाई इट इज फेलिंग? ओके, हाउस नंबर इस कॉलम के वजह से फेल हो रहा है, लेट्स सी. ओके, so basically I am setting the ID from 2 to 5. Now let's run the thing, and here if you will see ये क्या बोल रहा है, update something blah blah, cannot delete or update a parent row foreign key constraint. ठीक है, तो ये फॉरेन की कंस्टेंट बता रहा है, कह रहा है कि तुम इसको अपडेट कर दोगे तो एड्रेस में कैसे अपडेट होगा, अपडेट तो हो ही नहीं पाएगा, ठीक है. It will not be able to update because you have given the foreign key constraint here. That column, the column which you want to update, that is a constraint in this this one, this particular table, address table. So that's why it is not able to update. ये एक में issue आ रहा है. Now same way, suppose I want to delete the employee ID, delete some employee from my table. So for deleting, I have query what, delete from table name, let's say employee table, okay, where id equal to 2. मान लो 2 नंबर की जो आईडी है, जो एम्प्लॉय का आईडी 2 है, उसको मैं डिलीट करना चाहता हूँ, ठीक है, उसको मैं डिलीट करना चाहता हूँ. तो हाउ विल आई डू, आई जस्ट फायर दिस क्वेरी. नाउ लेट्स सी इफ दिस इज गेटिंग एग्जीक्यूटेड और नॉट. So this also throwing the same issue, cannot delete or update a parent row, foreign key constraint. So इससे कैसे निपटा जाए, how we can come up with some solution for this kind of scenario. So scenario is, again I'm telling you, scenario is very simple. The scenario is, if you are updating, if you have two tables in which one table is a child table, other table is a parent table. So if you are updating or deleting any record in the parent table, then how it will reflect in the child table also. समझ गया, तो कैसे करेगा, कैसे रिफ्लेक्ट करेगा, क्योंकि एम्प्लॉय आईडी कॉमन है दोनों टेबल में. तो आप एम्प्लॉय आईडी को अगर डिलीट कर रहे हो या फिर अपडेट कर रहे हो, तो चाइल्ड टेबल में कैसे डिलीट हो पाएगा, नहीं हो पाएगा ना, विदाउट फायरिंग द क्वेरी. तो इसको कैसे हम ओवरकम कर सकते हैं, इसको कैसे सॉल्व कर सकते हैं. फॉर दैट वी हैव दिस थिंग कॉल्ड द ऑन अपडेट एंड ऑन डिलीट cascading. Basically we call this problem as a cascading. Cascading means दो चीजों को आपस में क्या कर रहे हैं, आपस में ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं. Cascading literal meaning is just like joining the two things, establishing a relationship between two tables. Okay, so cascading effects using the on update and on delete. So we can solve this problem using one clause called the cascading on delete and cascading on update. इस clause से हम कर सकते हैं. So let's see how we can do it. For doing that, first of all, we will have to design our table in a cascading update and cascading delete thing, using the cascading update and cascading delete. Okay, now how we can do it? For that, first of all, we'll have to drop this table. पहले जो table बन चुका है उसको हमको delete करना पड़ेगा. Then only we can create a separate table. Okay, separate table means we'll add something here in the column definition, and then it will be able to delete and update. Okay, now first let's drop this table, drop employee table. मैं इसको डिलीट कर रहा हूँ टेबल को, क्योंकि मैं फिर से इसको बनाऊंगा अपने हिसाब से. ओके, ड्रॉप एम्प्लॉय, ठीक है, ड्रॉप टेबल एम्प्लॉय होता है ना, ड्रॉप टेबल एम्प्लॉय. सो इस टेबल को मैं ड्रॉप कर रहा हूँ. ड्रॉप करना मतलब डिलीट करना, ठीक है. सो दैट टेबल वुड हैव बीन ड्रॉप नाउ. कैनॉट ड्रॉप टेबल एम्प्लॉय रेफरेंस टू ड्रॉप टेबल. ठीक है, अब देखो क्या हो रहा है. इवन ये डिलीट भी नहीं करने दे रहा है. डिलीट भी इसलिए नहीं करने दे रहा है, क्या बोल रहा है यहाँ पे, सी हियर, कैनॉट ड्रॉप टेबल एम्प्लॉय रेफरेंस बाय अ फॉरेन की कंस्ट्रेंट ऑन द टेबल एड्रेस. कह रहा है एम्प्लॉय को डिलीट कर दोगे तो एड्रेस का क्या करूंगा मैं, लेके इसको अचार डालूंगा, ठीक है, क्योंकि एम्प्लॉय का ही तो एड्रेस होगा, तो इसलिए वो डिलीट भी नहीं करने दे रहा है. तो इसके लिए पहले हमको क्या करना पड़ेगा, पहले हमको एड्रेस टेबल को डिलीट करना पड़ेगा. पहले हमको क्या करना पड़ेगा, एड्रेस टेबल को डिलीट करना पड़ेगा. तो लेट्स डू इट, डिलीट ड्रॉप टेबल एड्रेस, ठीक है. So now I'm running the query. So now you can see the table has been dropped. Now I can drop my employee table also. You understanding, right? ठीक है. So दोनों टेबल मेरे, बताओ what?
Understanding, yes? Sir. Understanding.
Yes, good. Okay, so employee table and address table you have been we have dropped it. Now just refresh it and see if it has been removed from our database or not. So yeah, the tables has been removed. अभी हमने इसको remove कर दिया है. Now to solve that particular problem, whatever we saw, like if we want to update any column in the parent table, so that column should be updated in child table also, or if I want to delete that parent record, so that should be deleted from the address table also. So for that, what we will have to do, employee table तो ऐसे ही बनेगा. It will be like as it is. So इसको तो मैं ऐसे ही execute कर देता हूँ. Whatever the query we had written to create the employee table, that means your parent table वो तो ऐसे ही बनेगा as it is. ठीक है. So I am just running that query. So it has been created. Now let's come to this particular table, that is your child table. Okay, इसमें हमको कुछ ऐड करना पड़ेगा. इसको टेबल को क्रिएट करते समय क्या ऐड करना पड़ेगा? लेट्स सी. क्या ऐड करना पड़ेगा? लेट्स सी. सो यहाँ पे हमने कंस्ट्रेंट लगा दिया. इसके बाद SQL gives us some clause called on update cascade. On update cascade. और ये किसके लिए होगा? इफ यू वांट टू जस्ट हैव द अपडेट फंक्शनैलिटी बिटवीन पेरेंट एंड चाइल्ड, कि अगर पेरेंट का आप कुछ भी अपडेट करो तो चाइल्ड में भी ऑटोमेटिकली रिफ्लेक्ट हो जाए, ये उसके लिए है. If you want to have for the delete also, like if you want to delete some records from the employee table, it should be deleted from the address table also, child table also. तो उसके लिए क्या होता है? On delete cascade. ठीक है, on delete cascade. बस मुझे ये ऐड करना है. इससे क्या होगा कि जो भी आप चेंजेस पेरेंट टेबल में बनाओगे, चाइल्ड टेबल में भी वो चेंजेस रिफ्लेक्ट कर जाएंगे. सो वी विल सी हाउ it will happen. Okay, so now I am running the query to create my address table. Okay, so what happened? What's wrong, guys? On update, you have an error in SQL check manual that what's wrong? References, is it because of this column? References employee ID. Okay, now let's run one more time, see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, yeah, now this is created because of that comma only, it was creating issue. So now my second table also, the employee table, sorry, address table has been created. Now let's see here. Now this time we are creating with this thing on update cascade and on delete cascade. Okay. So now you can see the employee and address table has been created. Now let's go and just run the query and just insert the records also. तो पहले हम employee में record insert कर देते हैं. ठीक है. So employee में record insert हो गया. Now just check if records has been inserted. Okay, so record insert हो गया. Work experience 3-4. ठीक है. Now let's come to the address table also. So address table में भी हो गया. Now let's run the query for address table. Okay, address table भी हो गया. Now let's come to our real problem which we were trying to solve it by putting this particular line of code, this particular syntax on update cascade and on delete cascade. अब इससे हुआ क्या? अब जो पहले हम अपडेट कर रहे थे एम्प्लॉय की आईडी जहां हम 5 कर रहे थे, हियर यू कैन सी वी हैव वन, just see it very carefully, then only you will be able to observe the difference. Here we have one employee called Jack whose employee ID is 2. Now I want to update this particular employee ID to 5. Let's say 5. दो को मैं 5 बनाना चाहता हूँ, employee ID अपडेट करना चाहता हूँ. But the problem was in the address table also I was having an employee ID as a 2. So basically for that particular employee called Jack who was having the employee ID as a 2, for that also for in the address table also this employee ID should have been updated as a 5. ठीक है. तो ये अपडेट नहीं हो पा रहा था अपने आप से, तो इसीलिए वो फेलियर दिखा रहा था फर्स्ट केस में. बट नाउ इफ वी हैव एडेड दैट पर्टिकुलर क्लॉज, that particular SQL clause, that means on update cascade and on delete cascade. So on update के लिए मतलब अब कोई भी हम parent में update करते हैं तो child में भी update हो जाएगा. Now let's do it. So basically I am updating the employee table where I setting the ID equal to 5, where ID equal to 2. So just running the query. So you can see it has been successful. Now let's go and see in the employee table whether it has been updated or not. So यहाँ पे आप देखोगे जैक की जो employee ID 5 थी, so now it has been 5. Now come to my address table and see the जादू. See here also इसका मैंने अपडेट नहीं किया, मैंने क्या अपडेट किया था? केवल employee टेबल को अपडेट किया था. लेकिन here you can see in the address table by automatically it became what? It became as a 5. समझ रहे हो? पहले ये फेल हो रहा था, अपडेट क्वेरी चल ही नहीं रही थी, अभी अपडेट कर दे रहा है ऑटोमेटिकली. हाउ इट इज डूइंग? Internally SQL is cascading the two columns. Cascading the two columns means it has already established the relationship. So if you will make any changes with the employee table on that particular column, on that particular foreign key basically, so the same changes would be reflected to the other table also, the child table also. That's it. ठीक है. इसी तरह से डिलीट भी, पहले डिलीट भी नहीं चल रहा था, अब डिलीट करूंगा एम्प्लॉय आईडी 2 को. एम्प्लॉय आईडी 2 मतलब अगर मैं जैक को डिलीट करूंगा, इफ आई डिलीट द जैक फ्रॉम द एम्प्लॉय टेबल, the jack from the address table will also be deleted. तो jack की employee id क्या थी, 5 थी, तो 5 employee id डिलीट हो जाएगी. ओके, सो 2 को मुझे 5 बनाना पड़ेगा क्योंकि 2 तो एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता है, मैंने 2 को 5 अपडेट कर दिया है. नाउ इफ यू विल डिलीट इट फ्रॉम द employee table, the same record would be deleted from the address table also. So already I have ran the query. Now let's see. So in the employee you will see only one record, Neeraj. Now let's go to the address table and run the query again. Okay, so here also you can see the one address only, that is for Neeraj, the employee id 1. Okay, for the other employee, for the jack, it has been deleted just by deleting the employee record. केवल मैं एक टेबल से डिलीट कर रहा हूँ और दूसरे टेबल में ऑटोमेटिकली ये डिलीट हो जाता है. तो इसको कहते हैं कैस्केडिंग. ठीक है, कैस्केडिंग बोलते हैं. So any issue, anyone, any doubt, any clarification do you want? Okay, so no query, then I'll take it as a no. Then that was about the cascading. So the first two topics we have covered for today. Now let's go to the other topics. Deleting records from table using where clause. So this is as simple as the same thing. So suppose one more thing I would like to tell. There is something called delete star from delete star from table name. Delete star from table name. अगर आप ये लिख दोगे, this query is basically very dangerous query. इसको बहुत ही खतरनाक माना जाता है. And in the industry, if you will go as a developer, you will not be having permission to execute this query. इस query को execute करने के लिए आपके पास permission ही नहीं होगा. पता है, सारे queries, whatever queries you are having right now in the SQL, for every queries you will have the separate permissions for each developers in your company. Okay, so it's not like you will have this particular permission to delete the record, क्योंकि ये बहुत ही एक्सपेंसिव ऑपरेशन होता है. जैसे एम्प्लॉय किसी कंपनी में, अमेजन में मान लो, अमेजन के पास डेटाबेस है जिसमें सारे के सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, जिसको आप उनके वेबसाइट पे जाके देखते हो, ऐड करते हो, खरीदते हो. किसी एम्प्लॉय ने, किसी गधे एम्प्लॉय ने ये क्वेरी अगर रन कर दी, डिलीट स्टार फ्रॉम एम्प्लॉय, डिलीट स्टार फ्रॉम द अमेजन टेबल, तो क्या होगा, सारा का सारा रिकॉर्ड ही उड़ जाएगा. सो to escape from such an issue, employees in the industry are not given permission to execute this particular query. Delete query लगाने के लिए permission नहीं होती है. Only it delete कर कोई record आपको करना है, so many approvals you will have to take, then only you will be able to do it. So उसके लिए basically होता क्या है, we are asked to delete the records based upon some where condition. So इससे फायदा क्या होता है कि only some specific records would be deleted, and if you will not write any where condition in the delete, so all the records would be deleted. सारे के सारे record ही delete हो जाएंगे, and that is not good. If you are just running some business, so your data is very precious, your database is very, very precious, so you should be very conscious about updating or deleting the records from the database. So what I mean to say, if you have to delete the records from the table, then always use the where clause. So where clause means at some particular record only you want to delete. It's not like you want to delete the complete table. Okay, so that's about the delete query. So again, if you want to delete anything from the table, from the SQL table, so you have to write this particular query called delete, then from table name, and then put the where condition. So this where condition can be anything, like if you want to delete the record based upon some city name or based upon some zip code or any column name, because before basically we used to give the any column value in the where clause. So whatever the column value you will give in the where clause, for that particular column your control will go at the back end and it will delete just that particular row from the table. That's it, and not any other table. Other rows will not be affected. Only that particular where condition rows will be affected. That's it. So that was about the deleting from table using where clause. Now we have something called order by, group by, having all this blah blah blah. So now let's go and see one by one. Okay, उससे पहले what we will do, we will just insert few more records so that we can demonstrate the uh, this thing, demonstrate the order grouping and other things. Okay, so I think Jack I had deleted. Now let's me run it once again. So Jack को भी ऐड कर देता हूँ, फरीदाबाद उसका एड्रेस भी मैं ऐड कर देता हूँ. ठीक है. Why it's failing? Why it's failing? Okay, so if you will delete it, so ID is 1 and 6. So basically 1 and 6 we have two employee as in the employee table. Now in the address table I should have the same ID. So I have one, this one I'll have to make it as a 6. अभी वो insert होगा. ठीक है. So now let's select it here. So I have two records in my address and in my employee table. Let me add two more records so that we can see the difference of grouping and other things. Okay, so Neeraj, Jack, Tim, Joe. Okay, 3 employees I have added. Let's say I'll make him somewhat older, 30, and this one I'll make it as let's say 32. Salary let it be same. Salary work experience let me 4, and for him let me make it as a 5. ठीक है, 2 employees को मैंने किया. अब इसको मैं insert कर देता हूँ. Okay, so I have inserted. Now if you will see in your table, you will find the 4 records for the employees. 1, 2, 3, 4. Similarly, come to the address table also. और इनका भी क्या कर देते हैं, कुछ ना कुछ एड्रेस डाल देते हैं एड्रेस टेबल में. ठीक है. 1, 2. So zip codes for him, let me make it as a Gurugram, and zip code some random number I'll give. House number also let me give some random number 87, and employee ID. So employee ID here you will see 1, 6, 7 and 8. So 1, 6 has been over, 7 I'll have to give, and Gurugram, then I'll have to make some city name, let's say Agra, and some blah blah blah. Then this one have to make it as a 8. ठीक है. So इन दोनों को ऐड करते हैं, रन करते हैं query. ठीक है. So in the address table also you will find the 4 records now. So you can see the 4 records. Now I'll just remove this update, delete and everything. इसको मैं comment out कर देता हूँ so that it will need in future, we will just use it. Okay. Drop table also I'll comment it. Okay. Now in the address table, if you see, or in any of the tables, if you see, we have some addresses, some particular addresses. Let's say New Delhi, Faridabad, Gurugram, Agra. So what if here the order is random? Order random होने का क्या मतलब है कि अल्फाबेटिकली ये सॉर्टेड नहीं है या फिर न्यूमेरिकली वाइज भी ये सॉर्टेड नहीं है. What if we want to fetch some record in a sorted order, either ascending order or descending order? So उस केस में हम क्या करेंगे? So for that, SQL provides us one clause called order by. So order by क्या करता है कि it gives you an opportunity to sort your column either in ascending or in a descending way based upon the column value. So column value का मतलब क्या हुआ, अगर मुझे सॉर्ट करना है सिटी को सॉर्ट करने का मतलब क्या हुआ, पहले आगरा आएगा, फिर अल्फाबेटिकली क्या आएगा, फरीदाबाद आएगा, फिर गुरुग्राम आएगा, फिर न्यू दिल्ली आएगा. ठीक है. तो उसको अगर सॉर्ट करना है तो क्या लिखते हैं, ऑर्डर बाय and the name of the column by which you want to sort. So I want to sort it by city. Okay. So if you will run this query, इसको अगर ऐसे आप रन करते हो तो क्या मिलेगा, अभी क्या मिल गया, आगरा, फरीदाबाद, गुरुग्राम और न्यू दिल्ली सॉर्टेड ऑर्डर में मिल गया. मिला कि नहीं मिला? ए फॉर जो अल्फाबेटिकली जो सॉर्टेड होते हैं उस हिसाब से हमको मिल गया. ए पहले आएगा, एफ बाद में आएगा, जी उसके बाद आएगा और एन इसके बाद आएगा. So in this way you got it by order, using the order by clause you can get it with the sorted order. So by default ये ascending order में sort करता है. What if we want to sort it in a descending order, मतलब नीचे से ऊपर, बड़े से छोटा. ठीक है. तो बड़े से छोटा मतलब पहले न्यू दिल्ली आएगा, गुरुग्राम, फरीदाबाद एंड देन आगरा. सो फॉर दैट यू हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड DESC. तो DESC मतलब डिसेंडिंग ऑर्डर. Okay, so if you have to give the if you want to achieve the records in a descending format, descending order, so you just have to mention this keyword DESC, and it will give you the records in a descending format. So that's it. So if you will run the query, you will find the records in an descending order, the opposite way: New Delhi, Gurugram, Faridabad, and Agra. Similarly, you can just sort it based upon the, let's say I want to sort it based upon the employee ID. Employee ID मतलब पहले 1 आएगा, 6 आएगा, 7 आएगा, 8 आएगा. So in that case, you have to just change the column name. Instead of city, you will have to give what? You will have to give the employee ID. Employee ID आपको यहाँ पे देना पड़ेगा. So if you will run the query, so based upon the employee ID, it will sort it. Here you can see 8761 उल्टा डिसेंडिंग में कर रहे थे ना हम. By default ये ascending होता है, या फिर ASC लिख भी सकते हो. तो ASC अगर लिखोगे तो बाय डिफॉल्ट ये असेंडिंग ऑर्डर में करेगा. A1678. ओके, A1678. इवन इफ यू विल नॉट राइट ASC, so by default order by clause works by default in a ascending order. So this can be your interview question also, कि order by clause जो होता है by default किस order में sort करता है, तो वो ascending order में sort करता है. So here you can see 1678. Similarly, with any of the columns you can execute your order by clause. समझ में आया? Any doubt? It's a very simple, guys, nothing complicated here. ठीक है. Now let's go with the other clause, that is your grouping by clause. Grouping by clause. So let's see if we can group anything. Okay, so right now we have what? We have all the different records. Okay, so let me add some duplicate records, and let's try to do what? Try to okay, I'll update the query first. Update matlab basically grouping. We do what? Grouping means, suppose if you have some I will show you. Okay, first let me just update one of my columns in the address table. Okay, so I'm going to update the column address set. This particular city को मैं update करने जा रहा हूँ. City I am going to update it as a set city equal to New Delhi only. New Delhi set कर दूंगा. City equal to New Delhi. Okay, where ID equal to या फिर ID in. So I hope you already know about the in clause also. So if you have multiple value, if you want to pass multiple values for a column, so you can write this thing called in. So in का मतलब equal to का मतलब क्या होता है? केवल एक वैल्यू लेगा. अगर in लगा दोगे तो ये multiple values को accept करेगा in the where clause. So suppose if I want to update the city as a New Delhi, for the ID is equal to where ID in कौन से हैं? 1 4 5 6 है ना, तो मैं इसको कर देता हूँ 4 5 6 का कर देता हूँ, या फिर लेट्स से ओनली 5 6. so 5,6. तो ID जो 5 6 जो ID वाले लोग हैं. ओके, so I think this is nothing like the ID. We have the address ID, ADD ID, or ADD ID is there. ठीक है, the column name is ADD_ID for the employee for the address table. Okay, so for wherever we will find this 5 and 6 as a address ID, so for all those 5 and 6, it will just update the city as a New Delhi. Okay, so this is a way to update the multiple records. ठीक है, तो अगर मैं इसको करूं, now if we will run this thing, basically now what I have, let me show you. Okay, so right now what I have New Delhi, New Delhi, New Delhi. Okay, 3 New Delhis are there. One is Faridabad. So here comes the role of grouping by. So grouping by का मतलब क्या होता है कि suppose if you want to group your table, based upon some common column values. Common column value मतलब अगर मैं चाहता हूँ कि मैं ये पता करूँ कि न्यू दिल्ली कितने एम्प्लॉइज हैं, फरीदाबाद के कितने एम्प्लॉइज हैं, या फिर जितनी सिटीज अवेलेबल है मेरे टेबल में कितने एम्प्लॉइज कौन कौन से सिटी के अवेलेबल है. ओके, बेसिकली आई वांट टू नो द काउंट ऑफ ईच सिटी. ओके, ईच सिटी, काउंट ऑफ ईच सिटी इन माय टेबल. Okay, in my address table. So for that already you would be knowing something called the count. So count of star will give you the what? Count of star will give you the basically the count of the column, all the columns basically, all the rows, not column, all the rows. Count देता है, count is a aggregate function basically. It will give you the count of the rows. Okay, so I want the count of rows. Okay, comma city. Okay, from address. Okay, now I want to do it by the grouping by function. So grouping मतलब grouping by किसके हिसाब से मैं ग्रुप करना चाहता हूँ, सिटी के हिसाब से. ठीक है, सिटी के हिसाब से मैं ग्रुप करना चाहता हूँ. सो सेलेक्ट काउंट ऑफ स्टार सिटी. सो बेसिकली इसका मैं आउटपुट क्या चाहता हूँ कि न्यू दिल्ली में कितने लोग हैं, न्यू दिल्ली के कितने नंबर्स हैं मेरे टेबल में, फरीदाबाद के कितने नंबर्स हैं, या फिर जितने रिकॉर्ड्स होंगे सिटी में, सारे सिटी के रिकॉर्ड्स में कितने, कौन से सिटी के कितने कितने रिकॉर्ड्स हैं. सो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम जस्ट ग्रुपिंग बाय सिटी, grouping by any particular column. So any column you can do, and based upon that column you can group it. So let's me run this query first. So if you will run this query, okay, so if you will run this query, count of star comma, you have an error in SQL syntax, check the manual corresponding MySQL server version. What version? Oh. Group by na. Okay, so basically grouping by कुछ नहीं होता, group by होता है. So here you can see for the New Delhi I am getting count as a 3, and for Faridabad I am getting as a 1. So here you can see I am getting the records based upon the count of each columns, ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे जो न्यू दिल्ली एक कॉलम था उसके कितने काउंट्स हैं, टेबल में कितने रिकॉर्ड्स न्यू दिल्ली के हैं, कितने रिकॉर्ड्स फरीदाबाद के एक हो गया, न्यू दिल्ली के 3 हो गया. So here comes the role of grouping by. So grouping by simply means we are just aggregating the rows, ठीक है, based upon some column value. So group by clause में क्या आता है, same as a order by. So like in order by you do what, you want to just arrange it based upon the ascending or descending order. So same way in the grouping by, you just give out with an aggregate count of the values, count of the columns. Okay, now we can add order by also. So order by, मान लो इसको ascending और descending order में मैं करना चाहता हूँ. Let's say I want to arrange in the descending order of this thing, city, order by city. Okay, so by default ये क्या करेगा, ascending order में करेगा. Okay, so let me run it once again. Ascending order means first F will come, then New Delhi will come. So see here you are getting Faridabad and New Delhi, right? So this is how you are supposed to use the order by and grouping, group by. So again I am telling you, group by is an aggregate function, aggregate clause. Aggregate मतलब कई सारे rows को एक single unit में convert करता है based upon the column you are giving. So in your table, how many columns has this particular has unique values, okay, based upon the column, उसके हिसाब से वो आपको aggregate value, aggregate record देता है. ठीक है, that's about the grouping by and order by. So group by, order by हमने discuss कर लिया. Now I am having the having clause and count. Count also we have discussed. Okay, count also we have discussed. Count in the sense if you want to fetch out the count of star from some table. So suppose if I want to see how many records are there in my table. Okay, how many records are there in my let's say employee table. Okay, employee table में कितने records हैं. तो same way select count of star. Star मतलब everything. Count of star from employee. तो या वो क्या देगा, employee table में कितने records हैं. So count is again an aggregate function which gives you the summation of the rows. तो यहाँ पे देखो 4 employees के 4 records हैं हमारे पास employee table में. So count of star from employees means 4 records, 4 records are there. Okay, so that's about the count function. Then we have what? We have this limit. Okay, limit. So limit means what? Let me show you. Select star from employee. पहले मैं ये करता हूँ. Okay, select star from employee. So now if you are running this clause, so here you can see 4 records I am getting. But what if you want to just have 2 records only? मुझे पूरा का पूरा DB नहीं चाहिए, मुझे बस चाहिए कि 2 ही रिकॉर्ड, top 2 records मिल जाए. Okay, top 2 in this sense I just want to have the I just want to put some limit on my number of rows which I am getting here. Okay, which I am getting here, the number of rows I want to put limit. So for that we have this thing limit. Okay, limit is one of the keyword here. So limit, जो भी limit आप लगाना चाहते हो, मतलब I just want to, let's say I just want to 2 values. Okay, limit just 2. So for 2, only 2 records will be coming here. Only 2 records from the employee table would be appearing here. So here you can see only 2 records I am getting. If you will give some value, some, let's say if I want just one limit as a 1, so it will give you just 1 record. Okay, so similarly you can just put some limit on your number of records which you want to query from the DB, and it will give you the that particular value only, that particular record only. Okay, if you will give 500, so 500 का मतलब ये नहीं कि 500 record है ही नहीं है तो कहाँ से देगा, the maximum number whatever it will be there, that will only come. So with 500 also only 4 is there, so only 4 will come. Okay, so ये भी एक इंटरव्यू क्वेश्चन हो सकता है कि in your table let's say you have 100 records but you are giving limit as a 500, so how many records will come? So only 100 will come. Remember, it's not like कि 500 पे error throw करेगा या फिर कुछ और show करने लगेगा. No, it will give you the maximum number of records only which is available in the table. Okay, so that's about the limit. Then we have like and exist. Okay, so पहले like की बात कर लेते हैं, फिर exist को देखेंगे. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Okay, now so what I was saying, employee Jack Jim. Okay, address में करते हैं. Select star from instead of employee. Now this time let's go with the address table and try to figure out something. ठीक है. Now suppose you want some values based upon some where clause where you don't want to specify the full value of the column. Matlab, now let me show you. Suppose I am giving where condition. Okay, where condition where city equal to let's say New Delhi. Okay, New Delhi. So what will happen if you will run this query? See it very carefully. So you are getting only records where cities are equal to New Delhi, isn't it? Now what if you don't want to give this complete value, don't want to pass this complete value? So for that, if you don't want to exactly compare the columns, here we are doing what? Exactly compare कर रहे हैं. City की value New Delhi होना चाहिए. अगर मैं सिर्फ space हटा दूंगा ना, फिर कोई record नहीं आएगा. None of the records will come. See here you are getting 0 records, right? So that's why you have to give the exact value of the column. Then only you will find some value. उसके लिए हमारे पास क्या होता है? There is something called the like clause, like keyword. Okay, it's like an operator, like equal to an operator, right? So here like city like New Delhi. So अगर इसको आप run करोगे, so no doubt you will get the records. But even if you will not pass the exact value, you will get the records. See, okay, you will get the records, but here you are getting the 0 records. Okay, so there is something called wild card with the like. वाइल्ड कार्ड का मतलब क्या होता है कि अगर आप ये सर्च करना चाहता हो कि कौन सी सिटी है विच स्टार्ट फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर वर्ड कॉल्ड दिल्ली, और you want to find out some value which is starting or ending from the value you are passing in this like clause. I mean to say आई मीन टू से सम XXX ब्ला 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 है और उसके बाद दिल्ली है. तो आप कुछ इस तरह से अगर फाइंड आउट करना चाहते हो, सो फॉर दैट वी हैव द वाइल्ड कार्ड एंड दैट वी कॉल इट एज ए दिस परसेंटाइल सिंबल. Percentile symbol in the sense, after the if you are putting this percentile symbol, that means you are expecting some values before Delhi. Okay, so anything which will end from Delhi, any city which will end with the value called Delhi, that particular records will be your output. That particular record will be your output. So here you can see you are getting that particular New Delhi, New Delhi, New Delhi. कहने का मतलब क्या होता है कि जो भी सिटी जो जिसका नाम दिल्ली के साथ खत्म होता है, दिल्ली के साथ खत्म होने का मतलब क्या हुआ, न्यू दिल्ली. तो दिल्ली इज द लास्ट वर्ड, राइट? So by giving this percentile Delhi, you mean to say my value is ending with call Delhi. My value is ending with call Delhi. Similarly, you can put the percentile at the last also. If you are expecting some values to be ended as a, let's say I want to fetch some city name which has started with new, but I don't know with what it has been ended. Okay, so new percentile मतलब न्यू के साथ शुरू होता है सिटी का नाम, लेकिन खत्म किसके साथ होता है मुझे नहीं पता. तो सिंपली आई गिव परसेंटाइल. Okay, so it's like it acts as a wild card. So here you can see even with this thing I am getting a New Delhi, New Delhi, all the city names which is starting from the New Delhi. So this is the beauty of this like clause. So इसके साथ कुछ और भी चीजें होती हैं. परसेंटाइल लगाने का अलग अलग पोजीशन होता है. स्टार्ट में लगा सकते हो, बीच में लगा सकते हो, ठीक है. You can put it at the big in between also two words. So I'll recommend you to go through the documentation once. Okay, लाइक क्लॉज एसक्यूएल जब आप जाओगे तो यहाँ पे W3 से एक बार इसको पढ़ना कि कहाँ कहाँ वाइल्ड कार्ड वाइल्ड ये लगाते हैं, ठीक है. तो हियर यू कैन सी वेयर कस्टमर नेम लाइक मींस फाइंड एनी वैल्यू दैट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम ए. सो ए के बाद अगर कोई एग्जांपल दिया इसने, ए के बाद अगर परसेंटाइल लगाया है तो सारी वैल्यूज को फाइंड करेगा जो ए से स्टार्ट होते हैं. वेयर कस्टमर नेम परसेंटाइल ए मींस व्हिच एंड्स एट ए, लाइक ए और परसेंटाइल मींस हैविंग दैट और एनी पोजीशन, ठीक है. इसको एक बार एक्सप्लोर करना है परसेंटाइल कहाँ कहाँ लगा सकते हैं. अंडरस्कोर का मतलब देयर विल बी ओनली वन कैरेक्टर ओनली बिफोर आर, ठीक है. और परसेंटाइल तो इसका अंडरस्कोर भी एक वाइल्ड कार्ड है. ओके, सो आई विल रिकमेंड यू टू गो थ्रू दिस डॉक्यूमेंट वंस. इट्स जस्ट लाइक यू हैव टू पुट दिस सिंबल्स based upon the condition whichever you want. Okay, so I'll share this link. Let's go through this for the like, but basic concept is same only. If you want to fetch some value, some records based upon not exact values. Okay, so equal to में क्या देते हो, exactly column का नाम देते हो, exactly value देते हो. बट लाइक में exactly value नहीं देना पड़ता है, कुछ भी दे दोगे, एक वर्ड दे दो, दो वर्ड दे दो, या फिर जिससे स्टार्ट होता है उससे दे दो, या फिर जो एंड होता है उससे दे दो, ठीक है. तो इन दैट वे यू कैन जस्ट फाइंड आउट द वैल्यूज ऑफ योर रिकॉर्ड्स, ठीक है. आई एम जस्ट शेयरिंग दैट लिंक, जस्ट गो थ्रू दैट लिंक वंस. Okay, so that's about what, that's about like in the SQL. Now comes what, now comes the having, and we are left with having and exist. So now let's talk about the having first. Okay, so हमारा grouping कहाँ गया, where we have with the grouping. Okay, so now if you are running this particular query, okay, if you are running this particular query, so you are getting count of star one, count of the city from your address. Now for now I'm just removing this order by, because order by I don't want as of now, I don't want to sort. अगर मैंने having लगा दिया, having okay, count, having count of star, मैं चाहता हूँ कि मुझे सिर्फ वो वैल्यूज दिखाई दें जिनके जो काउंट है. काउंट is a what, count is again an aggregate function. Aggregate function means what, again I am telling you, count is an aggregate function. तो aggregate मतलब क्या होता है, बहुत सारे रिकॉर्ड्स का एक सिंगल रिकॉर्ड बना के देता है. मतलब काउंट ऑफ 3 न्यू दिल्ली नाम के रिकॉर्ड्स थे एड्रेस में, उनको सिर्फ एक रिकॉर्ड में कन्वर्ट कर दिया, एक रो में कन्वर्ट कर दिया, उनका काउंट ऑफ स्टार दे दिया. सो हैविंग क्लॉज गिव्स यू व्हाट, हैविंग क्लॉज इज फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ऑपरेटेड ऑन एन एग्रीगेट फंक्शन लाइक काउंट ऑफ स्टार. एग्रीगेट फंक्शन पे ही ये ऐड करता है, ठीक है. नाउ योर होमवर्क इज टू फाइंड आउट व्हाट एंड ऑल, आई विल गिव यू दिस होमवर्क, व्हाट एंड ऑल आर aggregate functions in SQL. एग्रीगेट फंक्शंस इन SQL SQL। ठीक है, इसको पता करना। एक होता है काउंट ऑफ स्टार, ऑलरेडी आई टोल्ड यू, जस्ट फिगर आउट व्हाट आर द अदर। ठीक है, okay, so what I was saying, count of star. So I want to figure out only those values which has count is greater than, let's say 2 or let's say 2। मैं वो चाहता हूं कि जिनका काउंट, जिन सिटी का काउंट 2 से ज्यादा है, सिर्फ वो रिकॉर्ड्स में यहाँ पे शो करें। ओके, सो फॉर दैट I am using this having clause. So again I am telling you, having clause are used with the aggregate functions. Okay, aggregate functions like count of star. Okay, then I am just putting a condition where count of star is greater than 3. So if you will run this particular query, so you will get what? New Delhi. So New Delhi का जो count of star है क्या? 3 है ना? That means 3 is greater than 2. That's why you are getting, and not the Faridabad. Faridabad is having just one record. That means the count is just 1. इसीलिए उसका नहीं आ रहा है, इसका आ रहा है। If I'll give you the 6, count of star is greater than 6, so I will not get any record, क्योंकि 6 तक कोई एड्रेसेस नहीं है हमारे पास। There is no any records whose count is equal to, means whose count is greater than 6. Okay, so that's why you're not getting any record. So with the 3 you will get the record. Sorry, not even 3, with the 2, because the New Delhi's records are 3 only. Okay, so if you are giving greater than 2, so that means 3 will come. If you can give greater than equal to also, not an issue. Okay, greater than equal to 2, so that also will work. Okay, so that means it will include the boundary condition also, boundary number also, so 3 को भी include करेगा, equal to लगाओगे तो. So that's how having clause works. So having clause, again I'm telling you, it works with the aggregate function, and you can just give some count or give some condition like the where condition. अब एक बात मुझे बताओ, one thing, कि already we have something called a where clause. Where clause हमारे पास होता है. Where clause means what? It gives you the option to filter out your record. जैसे मान लो मैंने दे दिया कि where city equal to New Delhi or where name equal to Neeraj. I want to fetch out those records only where some column name is there. Okay, based upon some column name, if I want to filter out, then what is the purpose of this having clause? Having clause भी वही काम करता है. Basically ये भी filter out कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा है? देखो, ये भी सिर्फ उन रिकॉर्ड्स को फिल्टर आउट कर रहा है जिनके काउंट 3 है या फिर 3 से ज्यादा है. इफ यू विल रन दिस थिंग, इसमें क्या मिल रहा है आपको? ओके, व्हाट यू आर गेटिंग? ओके, काउंट ऑफ स्टार. ओके, मैंने ग्रुपिंग बाय नहीं किया था. 1 सेकंड. If you are running this thing, so what you are getting? You are getting Faridabad and New Delhi. But if you are putting this where clause, it's like the where clause only. But what is difference between where and this having? Okay, so this is also an interview question. What is the difference between where clause and having clause? So where clause works on a single column. Where clause works on a single column. Okay, but having works on an aggregate function. ये एग्रीगेट फंक्शन पे काम करता है. इस पे तुम वेयर नहीं लगा सकते. वेयर काउंट इक्वल टू ये कर नहीं सकते. अब इसको करके देखो क्या बोलता है. देखो एरर कर रहा है यहाँ पे. देखो, check the manual that correspond to SQL version and all these things. Okay, so basically where class you cannot implement with an aggregate function. यहाँ पे aggregate function आप use करोगे, वहाँ पे where clause नहीं use कर सकते. So here comes the role of having. Okay, so again I'm telling you, having is same like where. In case of where condition, we just have a we don't work with the aggregate functions. Okay, but in case of having clause, we work with the aggregate functions. Okay, so that's about the having. Okay, so I hope you understood this thing. Now we are left with the last topic for the day, and that's your exists. Okay, so exists क्या होता है उसको चलो देखते हैं. Now let me just find out the employees. Select star from employees. Okay, select star from employees. ठीक है. Now I want to do the filtration something like where okay, where कुछ इस तरह से मैं करना चाहता हूँ. Where let's say salary where salary equal to, let's say, where salary, let's say 75, or let's say where salary is greater than equal to 60. I want to find out all those employees whose salary is greater than or equal to 60. So I will be left with Neeraj, Jim, and means I will be left with everyone. So don't do that. Greater than equal to 75 कर दो. ठीक है? So I'll be getting only Jack and Joe. ठीक है? So now let's run this query. So you are getting what? Jack and Joe, जिनकी salary 75 या फिर उससे ज़्यादा है. Okay. So here you are doing what? You are putting a condition using this where clause for this salary column. Now what if we want to put some values, some multiple values in the sense, suppose you want to have the values like salary exists, like let's say salary is equal to 60 also, or 75 also. So in that case, in case it is of the numeric type, you can give greater than or equal to. Okay, तो numeric type है तो greater than equal to वगैरह लगा सकते हो. ठीक है, but what I meant to say, what if you are filtering based upon some multiple values, multiple column value. Okay, so I'll show you the difference first. This was one thing where I was filtering out the columns, where I was filtering out the records based upon the based upon what, based upon the this thing, salary. Okay, now let me put the exist one clause, something called the exist. Okay, exist, where exist. अब इसमें लगा के देखते हैं होता क्या है. Where salary is greater than 75. Now let's see if I am running the query. So instead of where salary equal to 70, where salary equal to instead of before removing this exist, the query was running something like this. Okay, where I didn't get any record because it was equal to was not included. Okay, now if you will include equal to also, so you will get the salaries of all the employees which is greater than equal to 75. Now if I introduce something called this thing where exists salary is greater than 65, तो अब इसको चलाओगे तो क्या मिलेगा हमको? कुछ ब्ला 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 एरर मिल रहा है हमारे, क्योंकि I cannot have this thing. So in that case there is something called the common elements between the two tables. So suppose if I am having this employee and address, so in that case you can do what, you can figure out the employees which exist in, let's say, address table. Okay, suppose if I want to figure out some employees whose addresses are there, means the employees whose addresses are fixed in my, let's say, addresses table. That means if we want to fetch out some records based upon some common values in the two tables, so there is something called a joining of two tables also, that we will see some other day. I think that is planned for the next session. For now we will use something called this exist, in which we will check where condition in a second table. सो अभी तक हम क्या कर रहे थे कि जो कॉलम था वो सेम टेबल में एग्जिस्ट कर रहा था, जो वेयर कंडीशन थे वो सेम टेबल में एग्जिस्ट कर रहे थे. नाउ if I want to filter out based upon some value which are there in the other table, based upon the some value in the other table, so where exist, let me write the query for this, where exist. Now I will just include two of the tables. एक table मेरे पास employee था. Now I am going to add one more table. Okay, one more table. Select what I need to select. Let's say star from where address. अब मैं क्या चाहता हूँ ना, मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि employees भी आ जाए, उनके साथ उनके addresses भी आ जाए. Okay, select star from employee where exists. Okay, where exists, मैं क्या लिखता हूँ, select star from address where क्या दोनों में क्या कॉमन था, उनकी आईडी कॉमन थी, where employee.id. तो एम्प्लॉय आईडी मतलब जो एम्प्लॉय की आईडी हो वो किसके बराबर हो जाए, किसके बराबर हो जाए, एड्रेस डॉट emp id, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो हमारा कॉमन कॉलम नेम क्या था, emp id. Okay, so if you will run this query, so what you meant to say, you want to figure out all the employees which exist in the table, which exist in the table called address table, and where condition, in the where condition what you are writing, where this thing employee.id equal to address.id. So if you will run this query, so let's see what you are getting. Okay, so let's see what you are getting. So here you can see name, age, salary, work experience. Okay, so basically what you are getting, so since in our case all the employees are there whose records are there in the address, but now let us add one more record in the employee table, and we will not have that record in the where, in the address table. So now let's see if we are getting that record or not. Okay, so अभी हम क्या करेंगे, एक और रिकॉर्ड एम्प्लॉय टेबल में ऐड करेंगे. ठीक है, एक और एम्प्लॉय टेबल में ऐड कर रहे हैं. डिफरेंस यू विल सी इन सम टाइम, डोंट गेट पैनिक इफ यू आर नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग. ओके, सो जो नाउ आई विल मेक इट एज ए Becky. Okay, 32, 75 and all, let it be same only. Okay, 8 year. ठीक है, now if you are adding this thing, okay, so it's got added and you will see now 5 records of the employees, 5 records आपको मिल गए employees के. ठीक है, now with this particular query, whatever we wrote for the exist, so if you will run this particular query, so इसमें क्या मिलेगा, सिर्फ वही employees मिलेंगे जो address table में जिनकी entry है. How? So here you can see we are putting a where condition, where exists this particular thing. अगर आप इस particular query को ध्यान से देखो, start from address, basically we are, it's like the joining of two tables only, but exact joining हम नहीं कर रहे हैं. Exact joining क्या होता है, that we will see at some other session. Okay, so basically we are just checking, we are just filtering out those employees whose addresses are maintained in the address table. Okay, so we are just writing exist. तो यहाँ पे देखो हम दो टेबल को, एक टेबल ये है एम्प्लॉय टेबल और एक टेबल हमारा सेलेक्ट स्टाफ फ्रॉम एड्रेस, दो अलग अलग टेबल हैं. दोनों टेबल को हम क्या कर रहे हैं, दोनों टेबल से हम कॉमन एलिमेंट को निकाल रहे हैं. तो कॉमन एलिमेंट क्या था, यही चारों कॉमन एलिमेंट थे, इन्हीं चारों एम्प्लॉय आईडी एग्जिस्ट करती है. ठीक है, यही चारों के एम्प्लॉय आईडी एग्जिस्ट करते हैं एम्प्लॉय टेबल में, सॉरी एड्रेस टेबल में. बाकी ये किसी के तो करते नहीं है. यहाँ पे अगर आप देखोगे, सिर्फ ये क्वेरी अगर आप एग्जीक्यूट करोगे, यहाँ पे देखोगे केवल these employee ID 1678 only exist. Okay, so if you will run this query, that's why you are getting only the employees which is having the employee ID as a 167 and 8. Okay, so 167 and 8, so केवल वही employees आपको मिलेंगे जिनका address table में entry है. Okay, so again I am telling you, exist clause we use to figure out the common records between two or more tables. That's it, common records तक find करना है. Okay, so that's about the today's session. So far we have learned what we have learned, this updating based upon the where clause. That was simple. This thing was a new to you, I guess. This would be the new for most of the people. Updating based upon basically we call it as a cascading effect for the delete and update. Okay, so again let me repeat once again. So in the cascading we were doing what, we were just designing the child table. So here this was our child table. Let us see once again. So this was our child table. This thing address was our child table. So वहाँ पे हमने ये चीजें ऐड की थी, on update cascade and on delete cascade. So इससे क्या हुआ हमें, इससे क्या हुआ कि जो भी हम अपडेट पेरेंट टेबल में करेंगे वो चेंजेस हमको क्या मिलेंगे, चाइल्ड टेबल में भी मिलेंगे. तो अपडेट करना और डिलीट करना, यही दो चेंज हम कर सकते हैं. What other changes you will do? Either you can update or you can delete. So that's why I'm telling you the changes which you are doing in the parent table, that will be reflected in the child table also. So that was about the cascading effect. Okay, now we saw the order by. Order by किस लिए यूज करते हैं, किसी रिकॉर्ड्स को असेंडिंग या डिसेंडिंग ऑर्डर में अरेंज करने के लिए. So by default it has the feature of arranging in ascending order. So you can make it a descending order also by giving the keyword as a DESC. Okay, so DESC जब लगाओगे आप तो आपको डिसेंडिंग ऑर्डर में देगा. ठीक है, Now we have this having. So having is an aggregate function, same like it's like the aggregate filter basically, same like where clause. So in case of where clause, we just give the single values to filter out. In the aggregate, in case of having, we just filter out the values based upon some aggregate functions. Okay, like count of star. Okay, so basically we are counting the number of rows which are there, and if we want to specify some particular number of records only in our records, so with that we can achieve by the having clause. Count means what? This the aggregate of the number of rows. Limit gives you the only gives you to put the restriction on the number of records. कितने तरह के records चाहिए, कितने numbers चाहिए आपको records के, बस उसका उस पे limit लगाता है. Like क्या करता है? Like is like it's the same like the comparing the column and the value in the where clause, but the only difference is you don't need not to provide the exact value. You just have to give it the starting value or end value or middle value. That's it. Exist बता दिया. If you have more than two tables, so if you want to fetch out some common values from the two tables, so there you can put as a where condition. The second table you can put in a where condition. So यहाँ पे देखे आपने में कि जो address table था, it was a second table, and that we gave it in a where clause. So that's it for the today's session. Anyone, any confusion, any doubt? We have around 20 minutes left, so if you have any confusion, we can take it forward. Otherwise, I will wind up the session now only. I have nothing to discuss now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, you asking something?
Yes, sir. Sir, delete star और table name तो सेम ही वर्क करेगा ना ड्रॉप टेबल?
क्या बोल रहे हो? डिलीट स्टार और ड्रॉप टेबल सेम ही एग्जिस्ट करेगा, ऐसा बोल रहे हो?
ये सर सेम ही काम करेगा ना, वर्क करेगा?
नहीं, सेम नहीं करेगा. देखो, if you are saying delete star from employees, okay, delete star from employees, okay, let's first delete
कॉलम्स डिलीट करेगा जो वैल्यू में डिलीट वाला, लेकिन ड्रॉप टेबल पूरे टेबल को डिलीट कर देगा.
yes. So now let me show him first. So if you are deleting the star from table, that means what? Let me delete the table. We will delete this address table. Okay, delete star from address. तो ये क्या करता है basically? Let's see what it does. So right now if you will see star from table, so let me remove it. So अगर मैं इसको रन करता हूँ query को, तो ये आपको क्या देता है? जो number of records which are present in the address table. Okay, यही देता है आपको. Now let me run this query, delete star from table. If you will run this query, so ये क्या करता है? Basically ये क्या कर रहा है? You have an SQL sentence. Okay. Okay, fine. ये star expect नहीं कर रहा. Okay. So for some reason. Okay, so basically it has deleted all the records. So if you will go to the address table once again, तो यहाँ पे आपको क्या मिलेगा? कोई रिकॉर्ड्स नहीं मिलेगा कि हमने सारे के सारे रिकॉर्ड्स को क्या किया है? डिलीट कर दिया है. बट इफ यू आर ड्रॉपिंग दैट टेबल, अगर आपने टेबल को ड्रॉप कर दिया है, तो टेबल ड्रॉप करने का मतलब क्या हो? टेबल में क्या क्या होते हैं? टेबल में रोज और कॉलम्स होते हैं. ठीक है, रोज और कॉलम्स होते हैं. रोज कॉलम्स में क्या होता है? एक कॉलम की वैल्यू होती है. यहाँ पे एड्रेस, आईडी, सिटी, जिप कोड, दीज आर द कॉलम्स लाइक द हेडिंग पार्ट ऑफ योर टेबल. ओके, सो जब आपने डिलीट किया, डिलीट फ्रॉम एड्रेस जब किया, तो वो रिकॉर्ड्स डिलीट नहीं, वो रिकॉर्ड्स डिलीट हो गए. टेबल ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करता है इसमें, चाहो तो आप नया एंट्री कर सकते हो. यू कैन इंसर्ट अ न्यू एंट्री. But if you will drop the table, okay, so let me drop it now. तो अगर आप ड्रॉप कर दोगे, सो टेबल को ड्रॉप करने का क्या मतलब होता है कि वो सारे के सारे कॉलम, वो टेबल ही एग्जिस्ट नहीं करेगा. तो हियर इफ यू विल सी, लेट मी रिफ्रेश इट. तो यहाँ से वो देखो, यहाँ पे जो एड्रेस टेबल था ना, वो टेबल ही गायब हो गया. ठीक है, वो टेबल ही जाएगा. तो डिलीट करने का मतलब क्या होता है कि रिकॉर्ड्स जाएंगे, उसके अंदर जो भी डेटा होगा वो जाएगा. और टेबल ड्रॉप करने का मतलब ये होता है कि पूरा का पूरा जो टेबल है, टेबल ही चला जाएगा, वही डिलीट हो जाएगा. ठीक है, इंक्लूडिंग द रिकॉर्ड्स एंड द कॉलम्स. गॉट इट?
यस सर.
ओके, फैंटास्टिक. चलो फिर, आई थिंक दिस वुड बी क्लियर टू एवरीवन. वो लाइक वाला देख लेना. वी जस्ट यूज द सम वाइल्ड कार्ड्स लाइक अंडरस्कोर एंड परसेंटाइल. सो दीस आर टू वाइल्ड. बताओ. Yes, Abhishek, you are saying something.
Hello.
No, you are not audible. Your voice is sounding like a robot. Can you just ping on the chat if you have some question? Okay, so whosoever has any question, they can stay, other can leave. We are done with the today's session. We'll meet tomorrow with some practice questions. Okay, so I'm stopping my screen share. Okay, stop the recording.
सर उसने पूछा डिलीट एंड ट्रांसलेट.
Sorry.